In this tutorial series, I will be showing you how I created my game Asteroid King in Unity. The assumption will be that you are capable of creating 3D assets and textures in your own chosen programs, and as such, I will not be covering asset creation during this series. In part 1, we will be setting the scene by creating cubes and spheres to use as simple placeholders for our props that we will add in a later chapter. So, let's begin. First off, we're going to create a cube, or a box, whichever you want to call it. And what we're going to first of all do is move that to the origin by zeroing X, Y and Z. Then we're going to name the cube, and we're going to change the name to Rocket Ship in this particular instance, because we're going to use this as our placeholder for our player. And then what we'll do is we'll change the tag, change that to player as well. Next thing we need to create after we have a rocket ship is obviously an enemy for it to fight against or crash into in our particular case. I'm going to create a sphere. Again, we're going to put it on the origin, and then what we'll do is we'll actually move it a little bit further along the Z, so 5 to start off with. That's good. We'll change the name of sphere to Asteroid. Now we don't have a tag for Asteroid, so what we're going to do here, if we take a look, there's nothing really here. We could put enemy, but we're not going to. What we're going to do is we're going to open up the tag editor, or the manager, sorry, and we're going to increase the size, and that should give us 10 custom ones to add in. So in the first one we're going to put Asteroid, and then we'll use that as the tag. So we go back to Asteroid, and now under the tag it now has Asteroid, which we can now use. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a control system. So we're going to come up to the game object, we're going to create another empty, well, first empty, zero it, we'll change the name to player controller, okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our rocket ship, which is our player, drop it in player controller. We're also going to take our camera and drop it in player controller. In part 2, we will be covering basic movement, utilising iTween and iTween path via a JavaScript. First off, we need to correct a mistake we made here, which is put in an R on player controller. And now that that's sorted, we can now very quickly add in a light so we can see everything, see what's going on. Now we'll just need to rotate this a little bit. Okay, we need to take a look at our game view to actually see what we're going to eventually see through our camera. And just rotate that around to where I like it. Okay, seems good. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to create a path for our rocket ship to go down. So we're going to attach this into an empty. So we're going to 0, 0, 0 an empty, and we are going to call it moon path as the first destination, the first level of our game is going to be to the moon. And then what we'll do is we'll pop into our project, into our plugins file, where I have both iTween and iTween path, both available in the asset store. So if we now maximize iTween path, and we'll name this path moon. Now do remember, this is going to be important, the remembering the path name for later, for scripting. And then we'll set the destination to 10 on the Z. So as you can see in the main screen, there's a blue line dictating the path you're going to take. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create the JavaScript to follow that path. So we'll create a new JavaScript, and we'll name this forward motion. And then we'll open this up in mono. And then we'll start scripting. There won't be too much scripting in JavaScript during this tutorial series. Most of it will be done via UScript. But what we first will need to do is create a way of exposing this to Unity so we can access it later. So we're going to put a variable, and we're going to call it speed forward. It's going to be a float, so that it's going to be a number, and this will be how fast we go down the path. And then we actually need to type in the code itself for the iTween move to function on the game object that it's attached to, in which case will be the player controller, which is why it was an empty, so that everything that's a child of the player controller, so both the rocket ship and the main camera, will all move all at the same time. So we'll just pop this in now. And this is where it was important to remember what you've named the path. So we'll just type moon in here. And then this is also where we set the speed, or the time it takes to complete the path, which equals the speed that we go, which will be a variable that will be available to manipulate in the inspector. We're going to set it to orient to path, which means that we will constantly be looking towards the actual path itself, rather than constantly looking in the same direction that it was initially set to. So if we were to create banks or corners in our path, then the camera and the rocket ship will orient themselves along the path itself to make it look like they're actually going round the corner. Okay, so we'll save this. And then we just need to put the actual script itself on the item that we want. So we just need to open up player controller, pop back over to our project, drop forward motion in the inspector, let's see, we've got the main camera and we've got the rocket ship already there, so let's give it a try. Oh, and we have an error. Oh, we've forgotten to capitalize the O in game object, so we'll just change that. And then we'll go back, press play, and it instantly got to the end of the path. Okay, maybe because we haven't set our speed yet, so it was currently set to 0. So in 0 seconds it would get to the end of the path. So if we change it to 5, and then give it another try, it should take 5 seconds to get to the end of the path, and there we go, travelling very leisurely down the path itself. In part 3 we will add mouse control to the cube via UScript. After loading up UScript, we are going to first off have a blank one, which we will then save as. And we're going to call this one player rotation. And for the time being we'll put it on the master game object, as we haven't actually attached this to our player yet. I'm going to wait for this to finish compiling. We will be seeing that quite a lot. Right, now that we're back in, we're going to add a custom mouse event, which I picked up off of the UScript forums. We're going to have this be affected by the owner of this script, and the owner of this script is going to be the rocket ship. So if we pop over to the inspector and add in this particular graph, player rotation, so now this mouse axis events will be affecting the owner of this particular graph. Next thing we're going to look up is a compare bool, which is to compare if something is true or false, and we will have one path for true, one path for false. We will add in the variable for a boolean. As standard it comes out as false. We're actually going to change this and set it to true. And then what this is going to mean is on the mouse moving, yes, do this. And then what we're actually going to have it do is we're actually going to have it multiply first off. We're going to have it multiply a float. And this is going to increase the amount that the mouse axis event will actually provide for us, and will also allow us to adjust the speed in the inspector because we're going to expose one of these variables. So let's add in the floats. We're actually going to need 3 of these, so we'll just copy paste. That's the result. That will be B, and this one is going to be A. So we'll move A all the way over here, and it's the X input that we're going to actually use, which is the left and the right motion on the mouse. We're going to plug that into A, and then we're going to have B as our control variable. So this one we're going to actually expose, and then the last one will be the result. So we're going to call this one, we're going to call it rotation speed, and we're going to click the expose to unity button, and we're going to set it to 5 to start off with. And what expose to unity does, it actually puts the variable in the inspector. So next thing we need to do is get a set components, and we're actually going to get the vector 3 version. And what this will do, this will take the result from the multiply of the float in the z-axis, because that's the axis we actually want to rotate on. So we're taking the x-axis of the mouse and translating it to the z-axis, so we can get rid of the x and the y, we don't actually need those. And what this does, it takes a float and it outputs it as a vector 3. So we just need the vector 3 variable now, plug that in here, and then what we also need now is the actual transform for the rocket ship. So that's going to be in reflected, actions, transform, and under rotate. And we just need to make this a little bit bigger to make sure we get the right one. There it is, the vector 3. If we just move that as the next one along, we'll attach the rotation result, and what we are going to rotate is the owner of this, so the rocket ship itself. So let's just make sure we have everything. We do indeed. Save it. We get our lovely compiling splash screen again. Wait for that to finish. And then we'll give it a test. Now when we move left and right, we get rotation. Fantastic. The faster we move the mouse, the more it rotates. Okay, so here's the rotation speed that we set as the exposed variable. So if we now press play, we can see the speed that we're rotating. Now if we change this now, let's say to 1, click back in here and then rotate it, it goes very slowly. Bit too slow for my liking, so let's try it the other direction, 10. And this one's a bit too fast. So if we turn this off, you'll notice it's actually gone back to 5 all on its own, which is fantastic. In part 4, we will be adding collision detection to our cube. With our sphere highlighted, or our asteroid in this particular case, we are going to come over to the collider. We're going to turn on the trigger. Now we also need to do something to the box as well. Now the box, we are going to leave the trigger off. What we're going to do is we're going to add a rigid body found under physics. And we will come down here and we'll take a look. That's all. We don't want gravity because we want it dropping out of the sky. We do want kinematic because we'll be moving this object ourselves. Now we'll come across to UScript. Now we've got a blank UScript here, so we're just going to save this blank one out, and we're going to call this on hit. So this will be the scriptifier when there is a hit detected. So we'll add it to the master object before we add it to the object we would like, which will be the asteroid in this particular case. Wait for our components to update. There we go. Right then, so we're going to add a trigger event, which will be when an object hits the trigger, and the trigger is the asteroid. So we need to put the owner variable in. And then what we'll do is we'll come across the asteroid and we'll actually add the graph to the object. So graphs on hit. There we go. So the owner of the script is hit. We actually want to add an instigator, and we want to add the rocket ship as the instigator. So we'll drag that in here and place it as a game object. In essence, what we're saying is if the instance, so the asteroid, is hit by the instigator, the rocket ship do the following. So what we want to do is we're going to add something on the on enter trigger. For time being, what we're going to do is we're just going to add a log which will output a comment. We're going to put the comment as collision, and that's going to output it to the console for us, just for testing purposes for the time being. So let's save this, get another compiling screen. And then we will give it a test. We'll take a look at the console. It's got some information in there at the moment. Drag that to the bottom and take a look. We'll play or clear it when it starts, and then we should have collision pop up. There we do. Fantastic. We still have rotation as well. Let's give it another try just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. Yep, there we go. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag the scene view over here, and we will take a look and make sure it's firing when it actually hits the sphere. Yep, it's the sphere that's causing it to collide. Fantastic. In part 5, we're going to reuse the script we created in part 4 to create a script for a winning destination. First, what we're going to do is we're going to create an empty, and we're going to set the x and the y to 0, but we're going to set the z to 10. And then we're going to call this the win box. And then we're actually going to add the box element, which will be a collider. And that's fine for the time being. We'll set this to a trigger, and we're just going to copy what we did for the collision. So we'll pop over to UScript. We will save out this blank one, and we'll have this set to win collision. Assign it to the master for the time being. We'll load up the on hit, we'll highlight it all, copy it, move over to win collision, and paste it. But this time we will change the lock. Let's just add this particular one to the win box, and then we'll adjust the comment over here from collision to win. We'll save the scene, let it compile. Over the game, move the console back down to the ground, clear it out, and we'll give it another try. So now we should have collision and then win. We do. Fantastic. In part 6, we will be adding the losing conditions. In order to avoid the asteroid, we're going to adjust the shape of the cube. We're going to change its scale on the Y to 0.1, which will make it a very flat cube. And then if we take a look at the box color, that's followed the same shape. If we now go into game and press play, we'll notice we still spin around on the spot, which means we still collide with the sphere. What we see, we still have collision, we still have win. What we need to do is we need to make it so that we have the ability to avoid colliding with the sphere. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the sphere on the x-axis. We're going to move it 0.6 out of the way. Now this should just give us just enough room that if we rotate, we can avoid it. So we've avoided the collision, but we've still triggered the win, which is great. What we now need to do is see whether or not we get the collision. Yeah, we still get collision, and then we still get win. There's the problem. We're still having it say win after we've collided. So what we need to do is go into UScript, and we are going to take a look. And we're in our win collision script at the moment. So what we'll do is we're just going to move this along, and we're going to add a second one in. And this one will have this output comment saying lose. So the way we want it is once you've collided, if you've hit an asteroid, you go down, you get the losing comment, and if you haven't, you get the winning comment. In order to do that, we need to set a true or false statement, and we're going to do that in the on-hit graph. So as soon as that compiles and we get the option to load it back up, we'll load that, and we'll move this one out further. We're still going to keep that for debugging purposes for the time being. But what we are going to do though is we're going to have a set true or false, or a set bool for boolean, and we'll pop that there, and then we'll have it once you enter the trigger. So if the rocket ship hits the asteroid, then it's set to true, and then we need to actually have a variable in there. So boolean is up higher, isn't it? Yeah, there is. Okay, we'll pop that there. We'll have it set to false to start off with, and then once it's triggered, it will then turn it to true. We want to expose this Unity, but in order to do that, we actually need to give it a name. We're going to call this collision with a question mark. So it's like a question. We'll expose this to Unity, and then that will then show up once we've saved it in the exposed variable section of the inspector. There we go. And then that allows it also to be exposed to other UScripts. So on Asteroid, so if we then load up win collision, what we want it to do is we want it to, before it chooses the win or lose comment, we want it to check if that boolean was true or false. So we have it as a compare bool, and we have it if you have collided. So if it's true, then you've lost. You have not avoided the asteroid. And if it's false, as in you haven't collided, you've won. Now we need to get to check that one particular collision. It's that one here on the on-hit component, and the way to do that in UScript is through reflected. We're going to go in properties, and if we take a look, it's going to be on-hit. So the on-hit component, and then if we take a look down here, we've got collision and an underscore. Now that underscore should be a question mark, but that's a bug in UScript. It is still in alpha, remember. So we'll attach this to our asteroid, because that's the object that has the on-hit graph attached to it. And then we'll just take a quick look. So on trigger, compare yes or no. Okay, right. Save this. Wait for the compiler to finish. And then we should be able to give it a go. Clear the console. Give it another try. That's avoid. So now we should have the winning condition. Same way we used to have. Great. Now if we play it again, but this time we will collide. So we have the collision, and now we should get the lose. Yep, there we go. We get the lose. So that all works. In part 7 we will be creating a main menu and a game over screen. To create a main menu, we're going to first off create a new scene by going up to File and then New Scene, and then we're going to save this scene. We'll pop it in the Scenes folder and we'll call this Main Menu. And then let's just make sure that we've got it in our build settings. Yep, and then also if you take a look, you've got 0 and 1 in the build order. So if you haven't got it, you might want to add your current one to your build order. So if we pop game view off to the side, and we take a look at our scene view, we have our main camera. Let's just zero that on the origin, and then we're just going to create a couple of really basic buttons. We're going to use cubes for those, so let's put them on the origin so we can see where they are. Move them back, move them around until they're in a nice position. We'll move one off to this side, and we will duplicate it, copy and paste, and move that off to the other side. There, that's fine. Just a smidge over that way. Yep. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to name these, and this one we're going to have as New Game, and the other we're going to set as Quit. And then, so that we know which one's which, we're going to add some GUI text or GUI text, depending on how you want to pronounce it, for graphic user interface text. Center this, we'll change it to New Game. Make sure we space it. And then we will up the font size. And then we will move it into position. And then if we copy and paste it again, and this time change, let's name this one New Game Text, and then parent it to the New Game button, and then do the same thing for the Quit text. So we'll name that Quit Text, and parent it to the Quit button. And there they both are. And then, before we do anything else, let's actually change the Quit text to actually say Quit. Probably be useful. Okay, we'll pop into UScript. We'll move the game view over so we don't need that anymore. Just readjust this. Okay, and then we need to have a new graph because it's for a new scene. So we will new UScript, and then we'll save it. And then we'll save this one as main menu. Wait for it to finish. There we go. Right. Now we want the option to click both of those boxes. So we're going to go to Events, and we're going to go to Input Events, and we're going to get out of the way, Mouse Cursor Events, and we're going to copy and paste that so there's two. And what we're going to use is on mouse up. Let's just move those there. The game object is we're going to use the New Game for that one, and this one we're going to have the Quit button. And then what we want to do is a load level on the new game. So on mouse up, so that's after you've clicked in and the mouse button has returned to the neutral position. We want to load the level, and we'll take a look at our scenes. If you notice, I haven't named this scene anything special, it's just scene 1 at the moment. So if we call that scene 1, so load level scene 1 currently, and the quit button we will just have set to quit. There we go. Now bear in mind that if you're looking to build out for web use, yeah, it has no effect on the web player. So this is only if you're doing this as a standalone build. But for the time being we'll leave that in there just to demonstrate how it's used. So we'll save this, we'll pop into the scene. We will save this scene. We'll go back to our original scene. And we'll load up our win box. What we want to do is we want to change it so there's some sort of way of it telling you that you've got a game over, let's say, or you've won. Other than the console, because the player won't be able to see the console later on, because we'll actually remove the console, the debug console. So we'll just adjust this by having a print text. Now print text does the same thing as the logs, only difference is it prints it on the screen and not in the console. So we want it to print game over in the lose option, and we want to have you won in the winning condition. Now we're going to put a delay on these so that afterwards there's a duration that allow you to read your message before it then goes and restarts. Now the duration is a float, so what we're going to do is we're going to add the variable, and then we're going to make this float exposed to Unity so that we can then adjust this. So we're going to call this one message delay. We're going to expose it, which means that we can then adjust it while we're testing. I've set it to 5 seconds for the time being. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have after delay, we are then going to load level, and then the level we're going to load is the main menu. So in this way, even if you have game over, you get a main menu. If you win, you currently have a main menu, because we don't have a second level currently. So let's save this, and we'll give it a try once it's finished compiling. So there we have the message delay over here in the inspector. Now if we go to our main menu and we hit play, now we've got new game and quit. We can click on quit, doesn't do anything. Click on new game, we load the correct level, and we should have you win written on the screen. Now it's written in the very top left, but it's too small. So, and after 5 seconds it came back here. So that works. What we need to do is adjust the size of the script. So if we pop back into scene 1 and go over to the UScript editor, and I'm not quite sure why that has disappeared, but let's adjust some of these settings. So there we go, upper left. We don't want it upper left, we want it in the center. So middle center, and let's up the, no, let's duplicate this first off, and we'll put this, we'll put the losing condition back in, and then we will take this one and say game over again. We'll save this. We'll give it another try. So now we have U1 in the correct position. Go back to the main menu, click on New Game again, and let's try and get U lose this time. We get a game over. We got the collision and the lose, and after 5 seconds we get back to the original. So let's pop into UScript and make sure that hasn't disappeared. Nope, still there this time. Fantastic.